This week on Oasis by the Sea, Pastor Keith teaches server, receiver, worshiper, and thief from the book of John, chapter 12, verses 1 to 8.
As I've already alluded to, I got to go to a little pastor's thing this week, and it was really, really good. I was on the older end of the room. We got to talk about parenting a bit. There were some younger parents. It wasn't necessarily planned, but it came out that I got to share some of my experience of my 5 girls and lots of time parenting. And in that, I found myself reflecting a bit about my kids in all the ways I interact with my kids. You know, sometimes they come in from outside and they're pouring sweat and they're dirty and they're exhausted. They have worked hard at the job of being a kid that day. You know those days? They have done their work with gusto, the work of being a kid. And they turn to you and go, "Dad, can I have a drink?" And they're not joking. "I'm thirsty." And you get them that drink and they go, like the whole thing just disappears in about 2 seconds. They're not asking you like they asked for a cookie or something. They're like, they need water. They haven't drank for like 4 hours and now they're sweating bullets. And now they're like, "I need water." And we provide, as parents, we give them the stuff that they need. And sometimes they get injured. I don't know if you ever, of course you do. If you've had kids, you hear them playing. And then there's a scream, but it's a play scream. And then there's another scream that's play scream. That's fine. And then all of a sudden, ah! This is a different pitch. It's sustained. You instantly know this is not okay. And then you learn you can teleport, right? You just, poof, you're there. You get there like, how did you get your head in that spot? Between the bars, or they've smashed a finger, or whatever it is that they've done, and we rescue them. We have a relationship of curiosity. "Dad, what is that? How does that work? Why do we do this?" We answer their questions. And then there's the moments of pure joy, right? Where you're dancing and you're laughing and you're singing, and then there's giggling, and then you're on the floor and you're laughing so hard that you can't breathe. You're just rolling around, and just joy and silliness and nothing else. Relationships, real relationships, are complex. They have lots of parts. We relate in more than one way with real people. There's all kinds of appropriate interactions we can have in a real relationship. And since we have a relationship with God, it should also be a relationship with more than one facet to it. If we have a relationship with God that seems to only have one piece, maybe we're love worship, and we really get into that, and we're into worship. But the truth of the matter is, that's the only way I really interact with God. Have we flattened God into something so two-dimensional that the only way you would interact with God would be one way? Because I'm telling you, God is far more complex than that. God wants a relationship with us that has many, many aspects. Sometimes it's a way of hiding. We can even admire a person for their great studious mind and that they understand the Bible really well. But behind the scenes, we don't realize that God to them has only become a font of information, but He isn't a font of joy. But we admire them because of their great study. But the truth of the matter is, if we were to look at their whole relationship with God, it's really one-dimensional. So the servant might see God as someone who expects obedience. The learner might see God primarily as a source of truth. The worshiper sees God as a holy and glorious being. The prayer sees God as a distributor of what we need. And the truth is, God is all of these things, which means that we should be regularly approaching God in all these ways. In our scene today, there are 4 people interacting with Jesus: the server, the receiver, the worshiper, and the thief. 4 different ways that we're going to see people interacting with Jesus. Now, one of them isn't going to be a good way, so we'll get to that. As the title suggested, 1 serving, 1 receiving, 1 worshiping, and 1 coveting. If you don't know what the word covet means, hang on. I promise to explain it later, but if you just heard the word covet and I have no idea what you just said. That's okay. We're going to cover that word in a bit. So hang tight. Don't freak out. This event happens less than a week before the last Passover meal that Jesus has on earth. We are near in time to his death and resurrection. So let's read about the first person in this situation. We're in John chapter 12, and I'm just going to read 1.5 verses. Jesus, therefore, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there, and Martha was serving. Martha was serving. If you don't know where we are in everything that's happened, not long ago, maybe a month ago, we don't know the exact timing, Lazarus was dead for 4 days. Jesus raised him from the dead. If I'd seen my brother die and come out of a tomb 4 days later alive, I might be inclined to serve Jesus too. That's not a bad instinct. Serving is a perfectly legitimate way that we should interact with Christ. Jesus more than once encourages his Father to be servers. At this coming Passover meal, Jesus is going to wash the feet of the disciples, and when they complain about him acting like a servant, he's going to push back and command them to be servants. Be servants. It's not optional. In Martha's case, it would appear to be kind of her default mode, her natural interaction that she feels most comfortable with. Like I was talking about, sometimes we have areas where we drift towards. We meet the same family in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Martha is serving and Mary is not. And in verse 40, we kind of get Martha's frustrated outburst about that. Let's look at Luke 10:40. But Martha was distracted with all of her preparations, and she came up to him, Jesus, and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me alone to do the serving? Then tell her to help me. This happened earlier in their relationship. That isn't today. That was an earlier interaction that they had. And in that case, Jesus tells Martha to slow down. Jesus defends her sister and invites Martha to something deeper. Let's look at what Jesus says in Luke 10:41 through 42. But the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered by so many things, but only a few things are necessary, really only one. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Don't read this and think serving is useless. Far from it. Read this and understand that serving cannot save us. Serving must be a result of what we have received. Mary was busy receiving. Martha was busy trying to please Jesus with her effort. That was the problem here. We recall we saw Martha's frustration with her sister for not engaging in the same relationship activity. That's all too common as well, particularly if we kind of have flattened God into a two-dimensional being in our lives, and if we've decided that the most important thing God does is, say, give information through the Bible. And that's become like my whole interaction with God. Like that's the only way I interact with God is that way. Then if other people don't, it's easy for me to judge them. They're not doing the right thing because they're not doing the same thing I'm doing right now. Which is ironic because it's the position of the one who has oversimplified God that's actually unhealthy. Martha instinctively served, which was good, but when she turned that into others must serve just like me right now or they should be corrected, she turned her good gift of service into a bitter act of forced obedience. That episode from Luke is now in the past, and Martha has seen Jesus raise her brother from the dead. And in this moment here in John, there is no need to criticize her actions. She is gifted in service, and her instinct is to serve the one who loves her and blessed her family. The next person we see is Lazarus. Now, not long ago, this man was dead. Like I said, he'd been in a tomb 4 days. Jesus called him to life. This is a person who has personally experienced the resurrection power of Jesus. He experientially knows something I can only imagine. Lazarus, in this scene, has experienced Jesus in a way that I have not. Lazarus is reclining, the position of rest. If you do Passover with us, we'll talk about reclining. We'll talk about rest. Friends, that is not a position of shame or disobedience. He is not less obedient than Mary because he's taken this moment to rest. The man was dead. Jesus represents a power, a safety, a security, and an authority to him that I would struggle to have, and yet would be automatic for him. There is a time to rest in him and receive from him. And if we don't know that rest, if we don't experience that rest, when we need that rest, we're missing a vital part of our relationship with God. In fact, it was so important to God that we rest in him, that we recline, that we stop, that, right, he made a Sabbath day so that we would stop one day out of 7 and rest in him. He ordered it. Rest is passive. A portion of our healthy relationship with God waits on him. It waits on him. Not all of it. The place that we went this week was a monastery. It feels to me that the monastery lifestyle, the monastic lifestyle, it took a beautiful thing, a necessary thing of being passive in the presence of God and maybe really overemphasized it. There's nothing wrong with resting in God, but if it becomes the whole point of your existence, some of those people for 25 years had barely spoken a word. Where's the serving and where's the worship and where's the impact on the community and where is the evangelism and where is the rest of it? It's not that rest is wrong, but it can be overdone. We can flatten God this way as well. I find it fascinating to see the themes of these people. Martha had served before and she's serving now. Lazarus had been passive before and he's passive now. In John 11:11, Jesus described Lazarus as having fallen asleep. He meant dead. Lazarus was dead. I assure you, there is nothing more passive than dead. In that scene, Lazarus has the most passive position you could possibly have, dead. He has nothing to add. He has nothing he can do. He can't even ask to be rescued. He's dead, yet he received. He could give nothing. He couldn't even ask for anything, yet he received. He received life from an absolutely passive position. He received life. So we see it both passive and receptive. Spiritually, this is the one thing Jesus was telling Martha about when she was complaining about Mary. And that's saying Martha was trying so hard, but Mary was receiving. She was receiving the one thing. Mary was receiving spiritual life. She was doing it passively. She was sitting at the feast of Jesus, listening, and she was receiving quietly because there was nothing else to do. There's nothing to add. There's nothing more to be, but just to be there and receive what God was going to give. So she sat there and received. But this time, Mary has a new position. She has received, she has witnessed the resurrection of her brother, and today she will worship. Let's look at John 12:3. Mary, therefore, took a pound of very costly perfume of pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. I was tempted to make some jokes about something that sounds as weird as nard. That's a pretty weird word. Just so you know what it means, nard is a very expensive perfume, especially at the quantity that the Bible talks about. That quantity would have been about a year's wages for a common laborer. So that level of costs, very, very costly. It's associated with the very rich. It was used for a multitude of reasons. One rare reason was the embalming of the dead. I say the word rare because it was far too expensive for common people to use for embalming of the dead. When we find it embalming the dead, we find it on pharaohs in massive tombs that are the size of a pyramid. That's the sort of people that could afford to embalm with nard. It was very, very costly. I don't think it's necessarily justified that assuming that Mary knew or was thinking that nard was to prepare Jesus for burial. I think Jesus uses this opportunity to once again prepare his disciples for his coming death because Jesus is like that. But far more important than the identity of nard is the essence of worship. Mary beautifully illustrates, go back to the person, there we go. Mary beautifully illustrates the essence of worship. And now let's go to the next one. True worship is the most expensive thing we will ever do. Why would I say that? What do I mean? What do I mean by saying true worship is the most expensive thing you're able to do? Well, let's explore what true worship is not. I'm going to say true worship. I'm not just talking about worship in general. I'm talking about something really special here. Ultimate true worship. Here's what it's not. True worship is not singing happy songs about Jesus, per se. By the way, I love singing happy songs about Jesus. I have no intention now or ever of encouraging us not to sing happy songs about Jesus, but that's not true worship. You could sing happy songs about Jesus till you're blue in the face and never truly worship. That's not by itself true worship. True worship is not dancing or some other flamboyant act that's culturally edgy. Not that I have a problem with dancing either. I do that at home. I refrain from doing that here because it's a small room, and I want you to be paying attention to God, not the weird guy dancing over on the side. Sometimes I can't stand it anymore and I bounce. If that bothers you, I cordially invite you to get over it. Okay, if it's freaking you out that I'm getting excited and bouncing a little bit, you can just get over that, okay? I'm excited about worshiping God. But even that is excitement or enthusiasm in and of itself isn't true worship yet. True worship is illustrated in Romans 12, 1 and 2, where it describes us crawling up on an imaginary spiritual altar and laying ourselves on top of it. It's a response to the saving power of Jesus. It is a reaction to being confronted with a holy, blameless, sovereign King. It is the unreserved, unashamed, unconditional gift of everything we are and everything we have to God. Not every Christian participates in true worship before meeting God, but if they haven't yet, I assure you, that is rectified the moment they find themselves at the foot of his throne. It happens in the depths of our soul. It could be done in complete silence. It could be done in tears. It is something that no one from the outside could ever know. It is something that's happening here where you are laying yourself out before God. I belong to you. Everything I have is yours. You do what you want. I love you. I belong to you. That is true worship. It does impact our behavior, but it can't be achieved through behavior. We can't amp ourselves into it. It's born of sincere gratitude, a profound realization of what we've received. And so if we go back to that verse where we're looking at what Mary is doing, she's on the floor. She's pouring this oil on the Savior. We can visualize that, right? And then she's wiping it with her hair. Don't you see? She does not care what anyone thinks right now. She's beyond any concern about how she appears. She's lost in this moment. Nothing is reserved. Not money, not dignity, not even her own hair. This is a written record of a supremely powerful moment. True worship drowns out everything. Everything goes on the altar. All that we have, it is the most expensive act we're capable of because it gives God everything. All of it. All of our money and all of our hopes and everything we own and our complete family and all of our dreams, and we lump everything we could possibly give, all of it, and we say, God, yours. It belongs to you. We have no more that we could give than our true, extravagant, internal worship. It is beautiful. And in the midst of this beauty, someone complains. In the midst of this incredibly gorgeous moment of spiritual depth, someone's whining. This happens in church all the time, by the way. Judas complains. And he does not complain about the serving one. He does not complain about the resting one. He complains about the worshiper. Let's look at his complaint in John 12, 4 through 6. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples who was intending to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and given to poor people?" Now he said this not because he was concerned about the poor, but because he was a thief. And as he had the money box, he used to pilfer what was put into it. Judas complains because he covets something that belonged to Jesus, something given to Jesus. I told you I would tell you what covet means. It's a churchy word. We never use it in normal language. So if you haven't heard it and don't know it, you're completely forgiven. We only use this in church. This is a church word. It's related to envy, but it's more specific. So envy might just be, you got the job, I wish I got the job. That could be envy. This is more specific. Covet is when I want something desperately that rightfully belongs to someone else. It rightfully belongs to them and I want it, which is why it leads to theft. Because theft is the action that comes out of coveting. I don't steal unless I've coveted first. This is the natural way. So before, he couldn't have been a thief if he didn't have a coveting problem, right? That's how this goes. To be a thief, you have a coveting issue. That's why God said in the Ten Commandments, don't covet. He doesn't have to talk about stealing if we don't covet in the first place. We're just done. What Mary was giving rightfully belonged to Jesus. Judas wanted that for himself. He wanted the value of what she was spending on Jesus. He wanted the value of what people were spending on Jesus. All four of these people are in the presence of Jesus. One of them is upset in the presence of Jesus. And there is a lesson here, and it is a hard lesson. I will try to explain it well. If we come to Jesus to serve him, we will not leave disappointed. If we come to rest and receive, we will not leave disappointed. If we come to Jesus to truly worship him, well, that will completely absorb your attention. You will definitely not be disappointed. But if we approach wanting what belongs to Jesus, we will leave dissatisfied and angry. What belongs to Jesus that we might want? And this is where it gets prickly. Here's one of the things that belongs to Jesus: being right and wrong. The authority over what right and wrong even mean belongs to Jesus, not me and not you. To the extent that I agree with Jesus, I'm okay. And when I don't, I'm wrong. The whole owning right and wrong, that's a Jesus thing. But how does that work out in my life? When I want to control, or if you want to control, or anyone else wants to control what right and wrong is, and we start to own that, and then someone disagrees with us, we get angry. But the thing is, it doesn't belong to you. Defining right and wrong doesn't belong to you or me. It belongs to Jesus. You have no point in getting upset. It's his problem. Getting other people to do what we want belongs to Jesus, not me. Deciding what church should look like. He is the head of the church, not me. Christ's wealth belongs to him. His power belongs to him. His control belongs to him. When we covet what belongs to Jesus, we are on the path of betrayal. When we start to want, as a leader or as a follower, or wherever your place is in the church, when we start to want what Jesus owns, we're on the path to betrayal. If we come to Jesus and we leave angry, frustrated, jealous, maybe we need to look at what our motive was of coming to Jesus in the first place. Why did we come to church today? Was it to make everything the way we wanted it? Or was it to serve, or to receive, or to worship? Because you're going to be fine if you came to do that. Maybe we are frustrated because we came to get something that actually belongs to Jesus. Because those who come to serve, rest, receive, worship, they receive the reward and no one can even stop them. They can't stop them in church. They can't stop them at home. They can't stop them in work. They couldn't stop them in a prison camp. A person who comes to serve or receive or worship Jesus can be anywhere on the planet and they will receive what it was they came to get. Their circumstances have no influence on whether they received what they wanted. If we come into the presence of the Lord and we are satisfied, maybe it speaks to what we came to get. Jesus finishes the complaint by rightfully pulling the attention back to himself. This is John 12, 7 and 8. Jesus therefore said, "Let her alone, in order that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you will always have with you, but you do not always have me." He doesn't mean that he isn't going to be available to the Holy Spirit, but he does say, "I am only physically," he is foreshadowing that his physical presence isn't going to be with him forever. But Jesus knows what's going on. His action deflects this distraction for the sake of Mary. A lengthy response, an accusation, some kind of confrontation, any of that would have ruined the moment. He quickly pulls it away so that Mary can enjoy this moment of worship. He just shuts it down for Mary's sake. This man, Judas, who I believe was already under the influence of evil by this time, inappropriately attempts to disrupt the kind of beautiful worship that I believe made the angels stand still in awe. Worship like that makes the enemy writhe. Nothing has the power to completely enfeeble Satan like true worship. It is an offensive act to our enemy. It is a submissive act to our God, and it is more powerful than we give it any credit for. Jesus ends the interruption with his unfailing wisdom. There's no shortage of takeaways from this passage, and I hope that many of them have already been clear to you, but let's make sure we nail it all down. Serving, resting and receiving, worshiping and coveting. Serving and resting and absorbing and worshiping are all necessary. If we are strong in one and weak in the others, we need to not gloat about our strength. We need to build in the areas that are harder for us. That's what we need to do. We should have all of those areas in our life that we serve willingly and happily, and that we have time of rest and listening, and that we have time of deep worship. And if we're weak in one of those three areas, don't go, "Yeah, but I'm really good at Bible study." Don't. No. Let's find the area where we're weak, and let's put more energy and emphasis on that and get it stronger. Let's do that. True, complete worship will alter your life. Seriously. Radical surrender of everything you are and everything you own will change the way you live, pray, sing, work, save money, spend money, acknowledge risk, deal with difficulty. It will change your life. Angels will cheer and darkness will wail in defeat. It is a response to grace and a reaction to perceiving truly how holy and perfect our God is. Let's beware the subtle ways that we can covet what belongs to Jesus. Let's be careful of that. Let's beware of the words that make our complaints seem holy. What did Judas say? "Oh, this money could have been given to the poor." He turned his complaint and his coveting into words that sounded pious and nice, didn't he? We can do that too. It's the way we craft our words. We use all kinds of explanations, but what we want sometimes is the right to determine right and wrong, the right to control what other people do, the right to force the church into our own vision, the right to gain financially, to the right to amass power, the right to gain authority and hold it. And these all belong to Christ, who is the head of the church, according to Colossians 1:18. And this includes me. I am as much held to this as anyone else. And in fact, if there's someone in this room who might be tempted to grab some of that, standing behind this pulpit would be one of the more tempting places to assume or believe that I had some right to do those things instead of giving it back to Christ where it belongs. But they are not mine to have. And as soon as I would want them, I would become upset and jealous and one who covets. And then I would be on the way to betrayal in a place I don't want to be. Let's pray.
You've been listening to Oasis by the Sea. Thank you so much for joining us today. May God richly bless you until we see you next week at the Oasis.